Hello, Canadian football fans. Um, I want to address a couple of things. I apologized. I didn't really uh, do a first round baseball recap. I was kind of tied up writing stories on vocal. So I think I'll save my first baseball talk for about a month from now, about a little over a month from now, when September hits, and get you ready for the pennant races. But I'm here barely on time for some CFL talk, and wow, what a first third of the season, especially for fans of the Toronto Argonauts like me. The reigning, defending, undisputed Grey Cup champions are undefeated after one third of the season. And though a few the games have been challenging as they usually are. I mean, that's the beauty of the Canadian Football League. The rules make it so pretty much anything and everything is possible. And especially there was like that first meeting. I think it was the first meeting between the Argos and Alouettes that was like real nail biting. But it ended well for us. But yeah, Montreal though they're pretty good. They are. I said in my stories about the season. I said in my last stories of the last year, this past season, Montreal is going to be that team that might give the Argos some problems. They have been pretty fundamentally sound this year, even though the East it's not that good. It's not that good. Well, by this time last year it was completely mediocre. Now it's basically Toronto, and then there's everybody else. Amazing. This is our first year with Chad Kelly at the helm, and it's been amazing. Chad Kelly's been a godsend. He's been getting a lot of rushing touchdowns. It's just he's the CFL's Josh Allen, but he's just been amazing behind center, and it's been going well. And it looks like a too early prediction. We're gonna repeat. We're definitely gonna repeat. And Hamilton, however, has been having some problems. They are 2-4, one third through their season, including losing twice to Toronto. They got the final meeting of the regular season, of course, is the Labor Day matchup, and that's it for the season series. As far as Ottawa had that big game to end Week 7, 43-41 over the Stamps. That was a pretty good. It's a good high scoring game, which is what you expect from our neighbors to the north, and it was an overtime win. It was their second straight, and I'm gonna have to transition to the West Division because the first one, well, that was the West. Well, that was against the West team, but they beat another West team before this, Winnipeg. Winnipeg had that big lead, and they just blew it like that. Peg, they're doing fine. Remember, Winnipeg's coming off being knocked off their perch. Because last year they were trying to win their third straight Grey Cup, and that didn't really come to pass now, did it? But yeah, it was a little bit iffy for the Bombers, but they did climb out of it. They are now 5-2, one third the way through the season, and of course the most recent win was against Edmonton. Oh boy, poor Elks. First off, that really should be elk, because the plural of elk is elk. But yeah, it's just bad all around for the elk. It's getting worse. I don't know what the hell it is, because 8 years ago, this team won the Grey Cup, and 4 years ago actually, this team's in the playoffs. Now they can't seem to win anything, and they really can't seem to win at home. They have lost 20 straight home games. That is tied for the longest home losing streak in pro sports, along with the 1953 St. Louis Browns in Major League Baseball. That was their final year. That was their final year in St. Louis before they moved to Baltimore and became the Orioles. But yeah, they lost 20 in a row, and they're actually at home this week, so they could break the record. And who are they playing? BC. Oh my goodness. I don't know what's in the water in Vancouver. The Canucks would like some of that, but BC is no joke. Their only one loss was to the team that hasn't lost yet, Toronto. That might be the Grey Cup this year. It might be. I kind of hope it is because I think, let's see, I'm trying to think. I've been watching Canadian football. I've been watching CFL now for, I think, since 2013. So for 10 years. This is my 9th season because remember, there was no 2020 season for obvious reasons. I've seen every team in the Grey Cup game at least once except for Montreal and BC. I've seen Toronto twice. I've seen Ottawa 3 times. I've seen Calgary a lot. Calgary was in the final quite a bit. I think it's 4 times. I know they won. I think they won in 14, and then they went back to back. I think they went 3 straight years in 16, 17, 18. So yeah, I've seen Calgary 4 times. I've seen Edmonton once. I've seen Saskatchewan once. I've seen Hamilton quite a few times, but they've never won. I've even seen Ottawa a few times. They're the new team on the block. Because when I started watching, the Red Blacks hadn't existed quite yet. But yeah, Ottawa's been to the Grey Cup 3 times in franchise history. Won once. That was in 2016. And Winnipeg's been, 3? Has been to the last 3. But also, I've seen Winnipeg move from the East to the West Division because Ottawa came in. And Winnipeg's kind of like the Chicago of Canada, you know. In some, they'll be in the West in some leagues, in the East in some others. Like in the NBA, the Chicago Bulls are in the Eastern Conference, but in the NHL, the Chicago Blackhawks are in the Western Conference. It's crazy. And of course, in Major League Baseball, the Chicago franchises are in the Central divisions. But in the original divisional play, the White Sox were the AL West, the Cubs were the NL East, though they were supposed to be the NL West. But still, it's crazy. But anyway, so BC's kicking ass. Winnipeg's doing what Winnipeg does. Saskatchewan, they're 3-3, a third of the way through their season. Calgary's 2-4. They're in a little bit of trouble, but at least they're not Edmonton. Of course, Toronto's undefeated. Ottawa's 3-3. They're in second place. That's pretty good. Montreal's 2-3, and Hamilton's 2-4. No crossover comes to play. I know it's a little bit too early to talk that, but at the moment, no crossover comes to play. Of course, in the CFL, of course, the top 3 teams in each division qualify for the playoffs. However, if the 4th place team in one division has a better record than the 3rd place team in the other one, that team crosses over into that division's postseason. But they have to be better. If they're tied, the crossover doesn't apply here, and the crossover does not apply at the moment because Montreal sits in the 3rd place position in the East at 2-3. Calgary's 2-4 as the 4th place team in the West. So yeah, no crossover at the moment. But yeah, it is early. It is kind of early to talk playoffs, but there's 14 weeks left in the season, and some teams have 12 games left. Other teams have 11. Montreal and Toronto have 13 games left because I think they've had like 2 byes already. But it's gonna be interesting. So that's our recap of the first period, if you will, the first 7 weeks. And in the second period, weeks 8 through 17 start today with an Eastern battle, Hamilton and Ottawa. That's gonna be interesting. If Ottawa wins, which they should, the game's in the capital city. If Ottawa wins, they should make a case to be a playoff team and probably give Toronto some fits. As for Toronto, we're facing the Rough Riders. It's the Touchdown Atlantic game. That's in Halifax. That's on Saturday. That's a Saturday doubleheader. The second half is the Elks hosting the Lions, and the Elks are looking to avoid having the longest home losing streak in sports. They're 1 loss away from that, and it's Calgary and Montreal on Sunday to end that week. And of course, I mentioned Ottawa and Toronto. Those 2 teams face each other on August 13th. That will end week 10. And yes, the second third of the season, weeks 8 through 14, that does include Labor Day weekend. That's week 13, and that has the rivalry matchups per usual. Alouettes and Lions. The neighboring provinces go at it. Blue Bombers and Rough Riders, and of course on actual Labor Day Monday, Battle of Ontario, Argos and Tiger Cats, and the Battle of Alberta, Elks and Stampeders. That's Labor Day weekend on week 13. So yeah, so it's a long season still. There's 14 weeks of season. I can't wait for the rest of it. But for now, that's my recap of the first period, the first 7 weeks. If you like this video, click the like button. Click subscribe if you want more. Every story all 7 of my stories, my weekly recaps, for recapping weeks 1 through 7, they will all of them will be in the description below. Check them out when you can, and I'll be back on the next. I think the next sports. No, I might say something in between then if I'm up for it, but I'll finally talk baseball once September hits, which will be right before the next time I talk Canadian football. So stay tuned for all that.